Hey, curious minds. In a world full of secrets and shadows, every question leads to another mystery. Let's explore what lies beneath the surface. Today, we're venturing into, well, a place everyone's heard of, the legendary Bermuda Triangle.
That patch of the Atlantic, yeah.
Yeah.
Roughly between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico.
Exactly. And for decades, it's had this reputation, this aura of mystery around disappearances, ships, and planes just gone.
Vanished under supposedly unexplained circumstances. It really taps into something, doesn't it?
It really does, that fascination with the unknown, maybe even a desire for a bit of magic left in the world.
Mm-hmm. And we've got quite a bit to sort through today. We looked at history.com, Live Science, Wikipedia, of course, even a Reddit thread on unresolved mysteries.
Yeah, plus super summary notes, that YouTube transcript from Atlas of Cursed Places, info from the Bermuda Tourism Authority, Geographical Magazine, Discover Magazine.
Right.
Quite the stack.
Definitely.
So our mission really is to unpack all these legends, the lore surrounding the triangle, try to separate fact from, well, the more colorful fiction.
And figure out why this specific area still captures our imagination so strongly.
Right. So where does the story even begin? I mean, the name itself is fairly recent, isn't it?
It is, surprisingly. Bermuda Triangle is a term that was coined in 1964. Vincent Gaddis, writing for Argosy magazine.
1964, wow. But people were talking about strange things happening there before that, right? There were earlier hints.
Oh, absolutely. You can go way back. Even Christopher Columbus, on his first voyage.
Ah, yes. He reported seeing things, didn't he?
He did. He logged a great flame of fire, probably a meteor, we think, crashing into the sea, and later a weird light in the distance.
And the compass thing, that seems significant for sailors.
Very significant. He noted his compass readings were erratic. Now, this is interesting because back then, in a sliver of that area, true north and magnetic north were almost lined up.
Which could definitely mess with your navigation if you're relying solely on a compass.
Exactly. It could cause confusion. But it's important to remember the Earth's magnetic field shifts. That alignment hasn't really been a thing there since, the 19th century.
Okay, so Columbus had some weird experiences, but the legend as we know it, that really ramps up in the 20th century.
That's when it catches fire, yes.
Yes.
Reports of disappearances start gaining more public attention. And one incident in particular really stands out early on.
You mean the USS Cyclops, 1918?
Precisely. Huge Navy cargo ship, over 300 people on board, plus like 10,000 tons of manganese ore.
And it just vanished between Barbados and the Chesapeake Bay?
Completely. No SOS, no wreckage ever found, nothing.
That's eerie. And wasn't there that quote from President Wilson?
Yeah. Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship. Chilling stuff. And then, to make it even stranger, two of its sister ships also disappeared in 1941.
Along similar routes.
Pretty much the same area.
Okay, so that raises questions right there. Was it the rate? The ships themselves? Some sources mention the cargo, the manganese, being unusual for them.
Right, that came up in the Red discussion too.
Yeah.
Normally they carried coal. Heavy manganese ore might have affected stability. Plus, you can't rule out natural hazards.
Like rogue waves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know they happen. A massive, unexpected wave could certainly overwhelm a ship, maybe one already stressed by its cargo or some other issue.
Still, the lack of any trace is what fuels the mystery.
It is. And then fast forward a few decades to December 1945, Flight 19.
Ah, yes. This is probably the most famous Bermuda Triangle story, the one everyone knows.
For sure. 5 Navy bombers, TBM Avengers. They took off from Fort Lauderdale. Supposed to be a routine practice run navigation bombing practice. 14 men total.
And things went wrong pretty quickly. Compass issues.
Yeah, the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, reported his compasses were malfunctioning. They got lost, disoriented. The radio transmissions paint a picture of increasing confusion.
They were supposed to fly east, do a bombing run, then north, then back west to base, right, like a triangle.
Sort of, yeah. But after the bombing run part, near a place called Chicken Rocks, they got lost. Taylor kept saying his compasses were out. He thought he was over the Florida Keys.
But he wasn't.
Probably not. Evidence suggests he was much further east, maybe over the Bahamas. He reported seeing land, but said it looked broken, which fits the Bahamas more than the Keys.
And the other pilots, did they realize something was wrong?
It seems some of them might have. Radio transcripts suggest others maybe knew they were further east and were trying to suggest flying west, back towards Florida.
But Taylor was the leader.
Right. And he seemed reluctant, maybe, to switch to the emergency frequency. He kept trying to navigate with those faulty compasses. Protocol likely kept the others following him.
Until they ran out of fuel.
That seems to be the tragic conclusion. The last messages were about low fuel, preparing to ditch together in the sea.
And the story doesn't even end there, does it? The rescue plane.
That same day, a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat sent out to search for Flight 19. 13 crew members on board. It also disappeared.
Vanished. Just like that.
Well, there's a report from a tanker, the SS Gaines Mills, in the area. They saw flames, possibly an explosion, around where the Mariner would have been.
So maybe an accident. Those planes had issues sometimes.
They did. PDM Mariners were sometimes known, unfortunately, for fuel system issues leading to fires or explosions. So a mid-air explosion is the most likely explanation for the Mariner.
But still, 5 bombers and a rescue plane gone in one day. You can see why that cemented the legend.
Absolutely. And that initial Navy report didn't help matters with that line about flying to Mars.
Yeah, as if they had flown to Mars. That's quite a statement.
And
if they changed it later to cause unknown.
Right. That change happened after Taylor's mother protested the implication of pilot error.
Okay, so we have the Cyclops, Flight 19. The Reddit thread also mentioned others. The Proteus and Nereus.
Yeah, sister ships to the Cyclops, also lost. And the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a tanker carrying molten sulfur, gone in '63.
So you pile up these stories.
And you create this perception of an incredibly dangerous, maybe even unnatural place.
Which then opens the door for all the really wild theories.
Oh, yeah. This is where you get into, alien abductions.
Lost City of Atlantis technology.
Sea monsters, time warps.
Reverse gravity fields. It's quite a list.
It shows how much we want an extraordinary explanation sometimes. But this is where we need to pivot.
To the counter-narrative, the debunking.
Exactly. Because when you start digging into the actual research, a very different story emerges. And a key figure here is Larry Kusha.
The librarian and pilot.
That's him. He took a really skeptical look at all these famous cases back in the 70s.
And what did he find?
Basically, he concluded that the Bermuda Triangle mystery was largely manufactured. His book title says it all. The Bermuda Triangle mystery solved.
Manufactured how? Through bad research. Sensationalism.
Both. Kusha found that many writers, especially the early ones who popularized the legend, just weren't doing their homework. They were repeating earlier stories without checking the facts, often adding their own embellishments.
He was pretty critical of Charles Berlitz, wasn't he? The author of that huge bestseller.
Extremely critical. Kusha had that famous line, something like, if Berlitz said a boat was red, you could be almost certain it was some other color.
Ouch. So Berlitz's research wasn't reliable.
According to Kusha, not at all. Full of inaccuracies, exaggerations, even reports of events that never actually happened or happened way outside the triangle.
So Kusha found specific examples, like ships reported lost in calm seas that actually sank in storms.
Exactly that. Or planes disappearing in the triangle that were actually lost hundreds of miles away. Sometimes the missing vessel turned up perfectly fine later, but that correction never got the same attention as the initial mystery.
Okay, so poor research and storytelling played a big role. What about just statistics? Isn't it a busy area?
Hugely busy. It's a major highway for ships and planes between the U.S. East Coast, the Gulf, Europe, the Caribbean.
So more traffic naturally means more accidents, just by sheer volume.
Precisely. You're going to have more incidents in a heavily traveled area than in some quiet part of the ocean. It doesn't automatically mean the rate of loss is higher or that there's something weird going on.
Do the professionals, like insurers or the Coast Guard, consider it extra dangerous?
Nope. Lloyd's of London, the big maritime insurer, they don't charge higher rates for vessels going through there. The U.S. Coast Guard doesn't recognize it as uniquely hazardous either.
They just see the incidents as explainable by normal factors.
Pretty much. Weather, human error, mechanical failure, the usual suspects in maritime and aviation accidents worldwide. No need for supernatural explanations.
Okay, let's go back to Flight 19 then, with this critical lens. What's the more grounded explanation?
Well, the Navy's own investigation, despite that later change, pointed to navigational error by the leader, LT-9 Taylor.
Because his compasses were out and he thought he was somewhere else.
Right. He thought he was over the Keys, but was likely way further east. He got disoriented and unfortunately led the flight further out into the Atlantic.
And standard procedure, if lost, was to head west, towards the coast.
Yeah, that was common knowledge at the base in Fort Lauderdale. Fly west, hit Florida. For whatever reason, maybe confusion, maybe sticking to his flawed readings, Taylor didn't do that.
And maybe he flew over an island, like Gorda Cay, and got even more confused by the other Bahama islands looking similar.
That's a strong possibility raised in the investigations. It just compounded the disorientation until they ran out of fuel.
What about those Columbus compass stories, if the magnetic alignment isn't a thing anymore?
It isn't. That specific phenomenon, the agonic line running through there, shifted centuries ago due to the Earth's magnetic field changing. Compass variations happen everywhere. They're not unique to the triangle today.
Okay, what about some of the more scientific-sounding theories, like methane gas eruptions?
Yeah, the idea is methane hydrates on the seabed could release gas, creating frothy water that sinks ships.
Plausible in theory.
Theoretically, yes. But is there evidence it's happening now in the Bermuda Triangle? No. Geologists say the last major events like that in the region were thousands of years ago. No recent activity.
And rogue waves.
Rogue waves are definitely real. They can and do sink ships. But again, there's no specific evidence linking known rogue waves to the famous triangle disappearances. It's a possible explanation for some losses at sea anywhere, but not proof of something unique to the triangle.
It seems a lot of the mystery relies on the lack of wreckage, like with Flight 19. Have they ever found anything definitive?
That's the thing. No confirmed wreckage from Flight 19 or the Mariner search plane has ever been found, despite searches.
I thought they found some Avenger planes.
They have found some wrecks, yeah. One raised in 1990, a group of 5 found in 1991. But detailed examination showed they weren't the planes from Flight 19. Different serial numbers, different configurations.
So the most likely fate for Flight 19 is just lost at sea after ditching.
That remains the most probable explanation, yes. And the Mariner likely exploded midair. The lack of debris just adds to the enigma for many people.
Which maybe gets into the psychology of it all.
I think so. Our brains love patterns, right?
Yeah.
We try to find meaning, even in random events. And we remember the weird stuff.
Like a plane vanishing without a trace is more memorable than one crashing in a storm, even if storms are more common.
Exactly. A ship disappearing cleanly is a much better story. Sticks in the mind more than a well-documented, understandable tragedy. So we focused on the anomalies.
So if the evidence points to natural causes, human error, simple probability, why is the Bermuda Triangle still such a thing? Why the enduring fascination?
Well, part of it is just that lure of the unknown, isn't it? That desire to believe there's something more out there beyond our everyday understanding. A bit of mystery, maybe even magic.
Like the Atlas of Cursed Places host suggested.
Yeah, and you absolutely cannot discount the power of storytelling.
Those pulp magazines, Vincent Gaddis coining the name, then Berlitz's bestseller, they built the legend piece by piece.
They really did. They amplified the spooky parts, maybe downplayed the mundane explanations. The Bermuda Tourism Authority even kind of acknowledges how these stories took on a life of their own.
And then it just seeps into popular culture.
Totally. You see references everywhere. Shakespeare's Nisti. The Tempest gets mentioned sometimes as an early influence. Then movies like Close Encounters. Even cartoons like Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo! Pirates Ahoy! I remember that one.
See? It becomes part of our shared cultural background.
So even when you debunk the specifics, the overall story, the idea of the Bermuda Triangle, just persists because it's a good, mysterious tale.
It really is. Sometimes the narrative is just too compelling to let go of, even when the facts suggest otherwise.
Okay, so summing it all up, the Bermuda Triangle has this incredible long history of mystery. But when you look closely, the evidence really points towards, well, normal explanations.
Natural causes like storms, currents like the Gulf Stream, human error in navigation or judgment, mechanical failures, and just the fact that it's a super busy area.
No solid proof of anything supernatural or extraterrestrial.
Not based on the available evidence, no. And statistically, it doesn't seem to be more dangerous than any other heavily trafficked part of the ocean.
Yet that fascination, it definitely hangs on. It speaks volumes about how we engage with the unknown, I guess.
It really does. Which kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? In our modern world, with so much data, so much science, why do we still find these pockets of mystery, these unexplained legends, so incredibly appealing?
Some answers only raise more questions. Until then, stay curious.